People living on the streets often struggle to get a hot meal or any meal at all. New Jersey's largest city is working on a way to restrict giving food to the homeless, but the city argues that it's for good reasons. A spokeswoman for Newark's mayor, Ras Baraka, tells the New York Times, quote, "The ordinance the city is working on will prohibit agencies and individuals without a permit from feeding residents without addresses. All violators will be ticketed and fined," unquote. So what's behind this move? And what should we know about what homelessness can be like? Joining us now to help answer that is the author of that New York Times piece, Andy Newman. Mr. Newman, good evening. Welcome.
Thanks, Joshua. How are you?
I'm well. I'm curious as to what led up to this ordinance that Newark is working on. Was there something in particular that led the city to work on making this change?
So there's been kind of an ongoing conflict in Newark for years. There are a lot of homeless people that gravitate towards Newark Penn Station, which is the main train station in the city and one of the busiest stations in the country. There's a park behind the station where a lot of homeless people gather there also. And because homeless people gather there, people who want to help the homeless come there, they bring food, and sometimes at the park, there's complaints about messes, about people going to the bathroom in the park, about people just leaving a lot of food behind. And this is all happening as the state of New Jersey is pumping a ton of money into fixing up the train station, and downtown Newark is undergoing a lot of gentrification and redevelopment. And so there's kind of this tension between people who really want to see things getting spiffed up and people who want to help the homeless people, and homeless people themselves sort of get caught in the middle of it.
The city has responded to some of the criticism by noting that there is an array of things that it is doing in its homeless outreach. First of all, it says that this measure is designed to make sure that there's safe handling and distribution of food for the homeless, basically to protect the people who are consuming it. They are asking people not to show up around Penn Station and feed the homeless there for the reasons you just listed. The city also noted that they just established an emergency shelter called Newark Hope Village, and that they fed nearly 2,000 men, women, and families during the pandemic. So it sounds, Mr. Newman, like the city says it's got good reasons to do this, and that some of the pushback maybe is misdirected?
I mean, the city is definitely doing a lot to help homelessness, which is getting a lot worse in Newark. The groups that come into the city to feed people, what they're saying is, you know, we need to meet people where they are. The city's saying that kind of giving food to people in these public places the city actually said it actually encourages homelessness, because I guess if you get a free meal in the train station, you're going to want to sleep in the train station. The relief groups that have been coming in and feeding people thought that this was kind of a strange way to look at it, because what they say is if you want to get people off the street, you got to meet them where they are, start by giving them food, win their trust, and then you can kind of connect people to services, to housing, to addiction services, and all the things that are really essential if you want people to get off the street and into apartments.
We heard from a number of you about your stories related to homelessness. Some of you who are still dealing with homelessness now. Here is a voicemail that Chris left in our inbox. Listen.
I'm living in my car right now. February 1st will be 2 years. I work a full-time job, make a good pay. I can't afford a rent, not with college tuition, child support, all them other bills. I don't know how I've done it. I really don't. If I didn't have the job I did, I'd probably be without everything. In the 90s, I could afford everything. One paycheck at $9 an hour at 40 hours. Now I'm making $20 an hour and I can't afford shit. Well, sorry for the language. Sad. Work so hard for nothing.
Chris, I really appreciate you sharing your story. It means the world to us that you trusted us with your story. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best in getting to a better situation. I wonder, Andy Newman, what people are saying in response to this. I think a lot of us look at our lives, especially now with the pandemic, and think, there but for the grace of God go I. What's the reaction to this been like?
The reaction to this story has been fairly uniformly people thinking that the city is being a little bit unfair in trying to restrict people from sharing food. A lot of stories that I write about homelessness, some of the ones I write about homelessness in New York City, we get a lot of comments in the other direction saying people are, clogging up the streets and, sleeping on the sidewalk. The city should belong to everybody, not just the homeless. With this story, I think because possibly it's around the holidays and it's about feeding people, it's such a basic, it's like a biblically mandated thing that you should feed hungry people. And any attempt to kind of restrict that, I think, strikes people as a little bit tone deaf.
I'm fascinated to see how this turns out. I understand the point of view of people who feel it's inhumane. I also, having lived in San Francisco for years, understand the point of view of small business owners, for example, who say this has gone too far, the city's got to do something. What do you think happens from here? I know you spoke to one attorney with the National Homelessness Law Center who said that there could be First and 14th Amendment violations that they might try to bring up or that someone might try to bring up. But what's the next step in this before we go?
So, whatever the city, whatever the mayor's office and the homelessness services office come up with, it has to go through the rulemaking process and be passed as an ordinance by the city council. What the lawyer from the National Homelessness Law Center said was that by specifically saying that you need a permit to feed what they call residents without addresses, as opposed to just a permit to give away food generally, that wording seemed like it was targeting homeless people, and that's why that lawyer said that it might not fly. But they could change the wording. There are many cities all around the country that have enacted various kinds of restrictions on feeding people, on sharing food in public, and there have been lawsuits about this. Today in Fort Lauderdale, a group called Food Not Bombs, which actually has chapters all over the country and does a lot of charity feeding. A judge awarded them, I think, $12,000 in damages and has ordered the city of Fort Lauderdale not to enforce this rule that required a permit to feed people in a park. And in that case, it was that the rule was kind of worded so vaguely that there was no standard for how you get a permit, and it just seemed like it was arbitrary. But this stuff is going on all over the country, basically.
Andy Newman with the New York Times. I appreciate you making time for us tonight. Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.